Welcome to Terra Talks, where we talk about all things real estate. In each episode, we'll tackle current trends and topics of interest, both locally and regionally. However or wherever you decide to tune in, you're not going to want to miss this.
Owning a property in Barbados, whether it is your own property or a vacation rental, is definitely an exciting venture. But have you ever wondered if you are fully on top of all of your financial, accounting, and tax obligations? What if you knew that missing one deadline could cost you thousands? Join us for another episode of Terra Talks. I'm Betty Cathro, a real estate agent with Terra Luxury, and I'm joined here today by Dario Hines, our group client account manager. Dario is going to share super valuable insights regarding the obligations for financial, accounting, and tax that come with owning real estate in Barbados. And he's going to guide us on how you can avoid issues and penalties which can negatively impact you personally, your company, and future saleability as well.
Thanks, Betty. Today we will look at our annual accounting, corporate, and tax obligations from a personal perspective, company perspective, to just make sure everyone is aware of their obligations annually. We've seen quite a few circumstances where owners are unaware of what they need to do to make sure they're, like you said, on top of their obligations, and to help them avoid penalties and future issues as it comes to a sale, for example.
Great. So why don't we start from an individual perspective? What are the key tax implications of owning property in Barbados?
Right. Individual is relatively straightforward, and everyone knows that as long as you have, or should know, that as long as you have property in Barbados, it's subject to land tax. And that's pretty straightforward. You get a bill every year annually, and they have different due dates throughout the year, which offer varying levels of discount.
Yeah, you can definitely get a significant savings if you pay quickly.
That's correct, yes. And through the portal, a couple of years ago, the BRA, Barbados Revenue Authority, introduced a land tax portal, which gave a lot quicker and more direct access.
It makes it a lot easier.
Definitely. So you can pay by credit card, you can pay instantly, and that's due, like I said, have differing due dates throughout the year, and that's something that happens every year, and usually everyone knows you have to pay a land tax. Where it gets a little tricky for personal is for any person who generates incomes in Barbados has to file income tax return. We here in Barbados, we have a tax administration system called TAMIS, which is the administrator for all things taxes. On the individual side, outside the land tax, your personal income tax, which, depending on where you're actually resident, could have implications in terms of, it has to go as part of your foreign filing. The double taxation treaties. So there are things that you may want to get some advice from your substantive tax professional.
Thanks for clarifying that from an individual perspective. But what if I own the real estate through a company?
So here's where it gets a little complicated, a little more complicated than personal. So as long as you have a company here in Barbados, whether it's external or domestic, you have to file annual tax returns through the same system, TAMIS. There's a big misconception that if I make losses, I don't need to file my taxes, which is not true. As long as you have an operation here, you have to file taxes. So in addition to the annual tax returns, there's also annual corporate returns filings with the Corporate Affairs and Intellectual Property Office, or CIPO as we call it in our world. These are very straightforward forms. They just outline, if they change in shareholding, confirmation of directors. These need to be filed annually. For domestic companies, depending on where your incorporation date falls.
Right, your financial year end and that sort of thing?
Not with this one.
Okay.
I don't, that's not the case. Anyway, it depends on what date you're incorporated. So if you're incorporated between January and June, you have to file 2024's return by June 30th, 2025. Anytime after June, your deadline would be the following year, December 31st.
So what if I don't file in time?
Okay. Then there are significant penalties that can be
I thought that might be
significant.
the case.
Yes. So every late day, there's a $10 penalty added on top for every year and every day that's not been filed.
Okay. So how does that differ then for what we call external companies, or, in my world, we often refer to them as offshore companies, and traditionally they're owning real estate in Barbados. How does it differ for them?
Yeah. So that penalty differs in the sense that there's no cap for those type of companies. So that same $10, but no cap, and it goes into perpetuity.
Oh, wow. So that can really, really add up. We're talking $3,650 per filing missed per year, right?
Yep. And we've had circumstances, or few situations where, our owner isn't aware that this was a requirement, and we've run ourselves into hundreds of thousands of dollars in late filing penalties,
Okay.
which caused them to have a delay of sale to get it sorted out. And it could also have impacts on your ability to something as simple as opening a bank account, because you can't get a certificate of good standing from the CAIPO office if you have outstanding filings.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely know from my perspective that if we're selling a company that owns real estate in Barbados and they do not have their financial affairs in order, it can really cause difficulties. I've actually had a number of sales fall through as a result, because it just delays everything. People get, nervous, or maybe they find another property, and then unfortunately the vendor has lost a sale.
Yeah.
So I really encourage all of my owners to make sure that they have their financial affairs in order. But coming back to the offshore companies, I mean, do they have, is it like the same filing dates? Is it the same process?
The forms are fairly similar, different dates, but fairly similar. So I mentioned the domestic companies have June 30th and December 31st, depending on where their incorporation date falls. For offshore companies or external companies, they have to file their annual returns by April 1st of every year. So similar form, similar process, just a bit different dates. It really is a very straightforward process that can cause significant issues, like I said, especially for those external companies where the penalty does not end. Like I said, we've had circumstances where it goes into the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it's a tough pill to swallow in the middle of a sale transaction.
Absolutely. They shouldn't have to go through that.
Yeah. And it's all about just staying informed, right?
Yeah.
And we've also had cases where the owner thinks the lawyer is doing it, and the lawyer thinks the accountant is doing it, and no one's really doing it, right? And it's not getting the attention that it needs, and we find ourselves in that type of situation.
Yeah, I think that, people think that it's complicated. And what's the key advice that you would give to people in terms of making sure that they keep on top of these things, so that they don't get themselves into a situation where they're incurring penalties and losing sales?
I think my key thing is to stay informed, stay abreast of what's happening, keep in contact with the lawyer who may have done the sale for you, your property manager at Blue Sky. We would take care of most of the stuff for you, so we don't do the actual return, but we can connect you with a corporate affairs practitioner, a tax advice professional. Keeping abreast and asking a few questions could save you a lot. So that's my key advice: staying informed, staying organized, and just have constant communication with your professional.
So Dario, I have found over the years, like recently, people are becoming more and more conscious of earning some income on their properties, whether it's just to break even, so they're not paying out anything on an annual basis. A number of my owners seek to rent long-term, and overseas owners typically are seeking to rent short-term because they want to come out and enjoy Barbados a number of times a year. Is there a difference if you rent long-term or short-term?
Yeah. So, yes, Absolutely. The short-term rentals attract a separate levy called the Shared Economy Levy, or SEL, as we refer to it in the industry. And this really is 10% on the rental revenue that is charged to the guests, and that's paid directly over to the authorities through TAMIS every 2 months. And for Blue Sky Luxury, we manage that for you. So if we have your rental or your management contract, we take care of the filings for you and remit your net revenue and everything. We take care of that for you. So that's one less thing, one less hassle that you have to worry about with your accountant. We do that directly.
Thank you so much, Dario, for taking the time to uncover these hidden responsibilities that so many homeowners are not aware of.
Thank you very much, Betty, for having me on Terra Talks. The pleasure was mine. Hopefully someone can take away some valuable information that we've discussed here today and help them to avoid some issues in the future.
Absolutely. Dario recently completed a detailed article on corporate tax and accounting obligations. Feel free to reach out to us and we can make sure that you get a copy of that. And thanks for joining us today on Terra Talks.
Perfect.